Tobi, I've really enjoyed getting to know you more just over these last couple of days, and getting to know more about your story. And excited that you're here because I just think that you have a huge heart for others and a huge heart for serving. And we've had the pleasure of serving alongside of each other in our kids ministry for about the last year or so, and I've really enjoyed that. Really proud to serve alongside you. So. I'm excited to be a part of telling your story today because I think you have an interesting story and a unique perspective on things. And so let's start with just how you grew up and where, you're from North Texas originally, and then now you've been up here in Omaha for a little while. But talk about what it was like growing up and specifically how you kind of grew up in the church and came to develop your own faith and relationship with God.
So I was born in the church, so grew up going to church every Sunday, and through junior high and high school we went on a lot of mission trips and a lot of church camps. So I didn't really actually get my own personal faith or my own personal relationship with God until I was a junior in high school. We went on a mission trip to Tulsa, Oklahoma. John 3:16 mission was the name of the place that we were helping with. So I met this, so what we were doing there was we were in a povertized area, throwing basically a vacation Bible school for the kids in that area. But I met this little boy. He was in second or third grade, and he talked to me. We built a relationship, but he ended up telling me that him and his mom would sleep on playground park benches and playground slides because his dad was abusive to both him and his mom. So just to get out of it, they would leave and go find somewhere else to sleep for the night. And I think at that point I was just, as a junior in high school, kind of taken back. Because in high school, all throughout high school, I served second grade, third grade, fourth grade in high school, so kind of hit hard. I went back to our host home and talked to our youth pastor about it. He prayed with me. We talked about it, and then that night during worship, that's whenever I asked Christ to be my Lord and Savior. And for then on, that's kind of where my, I guess, story is.
Yeah. So what was it about that experience in Tulsa and your interaction with that little boy that really stirred your heart for Christ and stirred you to want to put your faith and trust in Him?
I think just seeing him and putting it in perspective with the kid that I teach, for one, how blessed I am, because we never know how rich we are, or never really fully understand that. But it just, I guess, kind of stirred my heart that I want to try and do something to help make a difference. And the first step to that is fully putting my faith in God to I guess help show others His love.
Yeah. So then you that was when you were a junior in high school, and then you graduated high school and went into the Air Force.
Correct.
And that's what brought you up here to Nebraska. You were stationed up here in the Omaha area. What was that experience like for you in the Air Force? What was it about that attracted you to serve in that way? And what were some things that you learned through that experience?
So as far as joining the Air Force, I wanted to travel and move away to just get out of my hometown. So that's why I joined the military. And then while I was in, I was security forces, so it's like an NP. And as far as stuff that I've learned, just that there are a lot of, I guess, differences about where I'm from, plus, or other than Bellevue, Nebraska. I don't know.
Well, how did you kind of see, what were some of the things that you saw in that experience that kind of helped grow your faith and help you just kind of see people the way that Jesus sees people, and how did that grow your faith in Him?
In the Air Force?
In the Air Force, yeah.
There's all types of people. I mean, I know all occupations have all kinds of people, but
Yeah.
there's people from everywhere in the world, all in one small base, in one small area. So one thing that I think my mom has grown me to do is just love on everybody, no matter who they are. And there's a lot of people that have a lot of different kinds of opinions, whether it's political or any issue, sports, anything like that. And being from a small town in Texas, I didn't get too much of a difference of view. There are differences, but it's not nearly as wide spread as it was. So it's, I guess, just, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's good. So then you were in the Air Force for a couple of years. You got out of the Air Force, but you were still around this area. And then that's when you met your fiancée, Sarah, right?
Correct.
Talk about how did you guys find your way to Relevant, and what brought you to Relevant? What drew you to Relevant Community Church?
So I was currently going to Calvary and Bellevue, and then Walnut Creek. I would jump back and forth between those two locations. It was definitely a decent drive from the Miller area to Bellevue. So we kind of talked and was like, well, we can find something closer. She mentioned that she had gone to a church in the Indian Creek golf course a couple times.
Which is where we used to meet before we
correct,
had our own building.
Which is where Relevant used to be before they built the Relevant Center.
Yeah.
So we checked it out a couple times and enjoyed it. It's a lot like Calvary. Atmosphere is great, very welcoming. So we decided to make it our home church. So that was about 4 months before they actually built the Relevant Center, maybe 4 or 5 months. So
what was it like that first Sunday morning that you showed up at Relevant? Did you feel like you were really welcomed in, or did it feel comfortable, or was it, I know there's always kind of a level of, new environment, kind of a level of uncomfortability, but what was it like for you just that first time that you came into our church?
So I think I was very skeptical. I know that Pastor Ronnie has mentioned a couple times, whenever you have a friend that comes to your church, you're like the most skeptical, or like you judge everything that happens more.
Yeah.
And I think I kind of had like a negative opinion about it already going into it, but as soon as I walked in, I was greeted and welcomed, and just felt great. So it definitely exceeded what my negative expectations were. So
when you and Sarah first met and started forming a relationship, was faith, like with Sarah, was faith a big part of her life? Was it something that you two were kind of working towards together? What was it like when the two of you started dating and were trying to figure out that you wanted to do more together in terms of following Jesus?
So faith itself was not a huge part in Sarah's life. They would go to church every now and then on like Christmas and Easter and stuff, but she had a traumatic event that happened in her life that kind of just made her question everything. So she wasn't really too into church, but she agreed to go with me to Calvary a couple times. So she enjoyed that. So whenever she wasn't working, she would come to me to church, and she saw how, like, I guess, how much I loved going and how much I just enjoyed every Sunday. So I think from then on, she was like, all right, well, I guess I can do this church thing. And then from then on, I think her relationship and herself kind of grew. So, but no, it wasn't necessarily a huge thing in her life before, but.
Do you think it was just coming to Relevant in these environments, and do you think it had something to do with, because we talk all the time, like a lot of people seem to, kind of avoid church or leave the church. We use the term unchurched people. They become unchurched people because of, like you said, past hurts or traumatic events in their lives. Do you think it was something about that she realized that she didn't have to have kind of all the answers, or that she didn't have to even necessarily agree with everything that the church believed? Or what was it, do you think, that turned with her, and what was it like for you to walk alongside her in that journey?
I think it was definitely the atmosphere at Relevant that kind of changed her opinion, because she has a family member that is very, very I don't know how you would call it, but the church that her family member goes to, the pastor said like directly demeans anybody that is gay,
Right.
bisexual, anything like that, and
Right.
will say if you're friends with this person, then you're just as bad as they are, and like,
Okay.
and then she has a very very hard view on that.
Okay.
So Sarah definitely thinks against that. So that's kind of how she sees church, is the way that her family member goes to church or sees church. So that's how she saw it before. But I think relevant being as friendly and inviting as it is, I think
Yeah.
that kind of helped.
Good. So let me go back to just kind of your personal faith journey and your experience with church. I think just in light of everything that's been going on in our country with a lot of the racial tensions that we've seen, a lot of the injustice that has become even more prevalent over the last couple of weeks and months, I think people would be interested to hear, and I know I would. What is it like for you, being in this community, a part of this community, a part of this church where it's predominantly white, right? Predominantly a white community in general, not just with Elkhorn. But what is it like for you? I know you kind of grew up in the church and kind of grew up in that environment, but what is it like for you, or maybe what was it like for you coming into a predominantly white church as a black man? Was it a bit of a challenge for you? Was it an adjustment for you, or just what was that experience like?
I think it was added tension to
Okay.
my already negative outlook, but walking in, I definitely felt that I was being looked at. Like Sarah was right beside me, but I feel like everybody was staring at me because I'm different. But they just think she's one of the a regular. But
Yeah.
I definitely felt like I was being stared at, even though I may or may not have been. I'll never know, but it's definitely something that was on my mind, and anywhere I go in Elkhorn, or anywhere in general, it's something that if you look around, I may or may not be the only black person in that area. So
Yeah. So building off of that, can you talk about some experiences that you may or may not have had in your life, whether growing up or as an adult? What are some experiences that maybe you've had with regards to being discriminated against or perceived differently or maybe treated differently because of the color of your skin? Have you had any experiences like that?
Yes. Well, I guess I'll start whenever I was growing up.
Yeah.
So my hometown, Wichita Falls, there's a city close to it called Iowa Park that is 99% white. So we know it as a stereotypical racist town. So there was one time I went to a convenience store. I was on my way back from a city that was past that, but on my way back, I stopped at a convenience store and walked in to see if they had a certain kind of drink. I don't even remember what it was, but they didn't have it. So as I walked out, the cashier asked me, what did I do, or what was I doing? He had me empty my pockets out, just to show I wasn't stealing anything. And then I was able to go. So that was kind of high schoolish area. I think I was probably a freshman or sophomore. But every time I go into a store, I know there's been multiple times when I've been followed by workers. I guess one of the most recent things that's happened was it was like 3 or 4 months after I got out of the Air Force.
Okay.
I lived in the Millard area. I was driving to meet up with one of the campus pastors from Calvary. We did a Bible study. So I was on my way there, running a little late. Got pulled over and grabbed my wallet out, put it on the on my armrest. As the officer got out of his vehicle, he told me to put my hands out of the window. So put my hands outside of the window. I looked in my rearview mirror and saw that his weapon was drawn. It wasn't pointed at me, but it was drawn out of his holster. So from then on, asked me if I had any drugs or weapons in the vehicle, which I didn't. So I told him I didn't, and asked me for my license, registration, and proof of insurance. In the state of Texas, the insurance, I still had my Texas plates because I had just gotten out of the military. So in the state of Texas, the registration is on the windshield. It's not like a hard copy.
Right.
So I mentioned that to him, and he told me that I was wrong, that I needed to have some sort of documentation of it, and that I was lying to him or whatever the case is. So then he directed me with my, he also asked me what I was doing in that area, and I told him I was going to a Bible study. I told him I'd call the campus pastor if he needed proof that what I was doing. My driver's license had the address right up the street of where I lived. It was about probably 5 to 6 miles away from there. So he had me with my left hand, grab my license and insurance. Went back to his vehicle. About 25 minutes later, he came back to the vehicle and asked me again, do I have any guns or drugs in the vehicle? And I told him no. And then from then on, he told me I need to get some sort of documentation for my registration rather than what's on the window. And he still has his weapon in his hand at that time. It's unholstered still. So haven't had any, before that, I haven't had any, that kind of interaction with law enforcement. I respect law enforcement.
Never before, huh?
No, not at all. Definitely respect law enforcement. I'm very respectful whenever it comes to traffic stops, but
When I know you had mentioned that, I mean, in the military, that's basically what you were. You were essentially a law enforcement officer, part of security, a military police officer, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And so you know kind of how it works, and you know what's respectful and what's not. And you did all those things, and you were still treated differently. So being that you said that had never happened to you before, how did that affect you going forward? I mean, how did that kind of change? Did it change your worldview? Did it change how you saw certain people or how you interacted with law enforcement? Can you talk about that a little bit?
yes. So due to my training with law enforcement on off it, I always saw it from a law enforcement perspective. Anytime I'd see a video on the news, on Facebook, I'd always say, all right, well, that's one camera angle. You don't know what's happening in the background. You don't know what's going on another angle. So
Right.
I've always seen it as that way, which I still do in a sense, but now I can't be naive enough to know that me getting pulled over could be either the end of my life or the end of of something, and even if I'm not doing anything wrong.
Right.
Every time I see a video and I see I don't know, someone being pulled over, a weapon drawn, I'm like, oh, well, what did that guy do now? What did that criminal do now? But it's not at all always that case. It's definitely there's people that are good at their jobs and people that are bad at their jobs, and people that have different opinions about other people, and that can change everything whenever it comes to someone with a position like a law enforcement officer. So
Growing up, was that, I mean, you talked a little bit about how you experienced that growing up, but growing up, was that something that was commonplace, or something that your parents maybe even discussed with you, your family discussed with you growing up?
yes, I remember when I was a little bit younger, my mom did mention that we're different than everybody, because I grew up in a predominantly white area, so that we are different than other people. So if people say anything to you, just ignore them. They're not nice people, essentially. So my mom did explain it to me, and I mean, I would see small things growing up that I didn't think too much about, but looking back now, it's just shows that racism isn't just something that happened way back when. It's something that is still occurring and is alive and well. I remember in high school we played a team, this little area called Bowie, and every time we went there, we always had issues with the team. There would always be police escorts because we had me and my brother and a couple other black people on the team. So always be issues with the parents, with the players, and there would always have to have police there with us during those games. So I don't know, it became, I guess, too common, so it kind of just, I don't know.
So what made you want to go into, I know you talked about how you really wanted to go into law enforcement out of high school. That was something you really wanted to do. What was it about going into law enforcement and then in essence going into the military that, like, what was it about your background and your perspective that made you want to go into that? Like, were you wanting to see some changes done? Were you wanting to I mean, obviously, I'm sure you wanted to make a difference, make an impact in your community. So how did that kind of play out for you?
Definitely. So, as a kid, I mean, I was your average kid that wanted to be a cop whenever he grows up.
Yeah.
But joining the Air Force, my recruiter told me I'd be a cop in the Air Force, which is essentially what I was.
Uh-huh.
So that's what I joined to do. And then after I got out, I was like, well, I can be a cop now. And I want to make a difference to show that, hey, not all cops are bad, not all cops are racist, stuff like that. But it's, I don't know, something I definitely wanted to do to make a difference, to show the change, to be the change. But
yeah. It's a battle too. I mean, it's as much as you want to make a change and want to see things better, like you know that you're also just one person. Like you can't do it all. And so I just really appreciate your passion for that, and I see that play out in how you serve here at the church and how you lead the kids that we work with here with the church, and how you just love on them and try to show them just that you can be the change that you want to see. We talk about that all the time, right? You can make an impact, and you can be like Jesus and love others and see others as humans, as people. And so I really appreciate that about you. So knowing that and knowing the things that you've experienced and the perspectives that you have, with all the, like I said, with all the injustice that we've seen lately that's become more prevalent and kind of come to the surface recently, and the tragic deaths of too many black men and women at the hands of law enforcement, how do you hope to see the love of Jesus, being that you are a black man, part of the black community, but also being a follower of Christ and believing what you believe? How do you hope to see the love of Jesus kind of break through and begin to bring some peace and some hope and some unity amongst people, no matter where they come from, what they look like? How do you hope that plays out in the future?
So, it's a hard question because there's so many hard hearts that are out there that don't want to change. But
Yeah.
I had a good friend recently tell me that God is the bridge, that the cross is the bridge, that not only it's not just white people that go to prison, to heaven. It's not just black people that go to heaven. It's not just Asians. It's everybody. It's human race. So
Yeah.
I think that is what I'm hoping that the love of Christ is able to overcome all of this and shine through, so we can hopefully all just love one another,
Right.
no matter the skin, the religion, the political views, anything.
Yeah. What role do you think that, we talk about the importance of the local church here and talk about how the local church is Jesus' agent of hope in our communities. What are some ways that the local church, specifically with our church, with Relevant, what are some ways that we can make that known and better love on people, better serve people? Are there things that you think can accomplish that we can move forward and progress in that way?
I don't know how to answer that, honestly.
Yeah. It's tough. Yeah.
It's definitely a hard question. But as far as things to do, just
Being involved in the community, right? And like I know you mentioned about we've got to be able to see people for people, right? And see just what you're talking about, the beauty of God's creation, the beauty that we're all part of the human race and all part of mankind. And then with that, there's a lot of diversity of things that God created, of people that God created to show his beauty. And yeah, I think you hit it right on the head where you talked about we have to be able to love like him and serve like him and see the world and see people through his eyes. So, Tobi, I appreciate you being here. I thank you for just being vulnerable. I know this is kind of an uncomfortable setting for you, but I really appreciate you being here and sharing your story, because I think your story has a lot of power, and your perspective on things has a lot of power. I just want you to know that I love you and I respect you just as a brother in Christ, but just as a human being and as a person. And I am very proud and very grateful to be called the same church body as you, and to be able to serve alongside of you and doing what we do here, which is, just leading kids and loving kids and teaching them about who Jesus is and about how he can make a difference in their lives and how he can use them to make a difference in other people's lives. And so I thank you for being here and appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. For those of you listening and watching at home, I just want to invite you to think about kind of where you're at in your life, and think about who Jesus is to you. If you feel like you are searching for that hope and that joy and that peace and justice and unity that we all, I think, internally crave, but seem to be looking for in a lot of different areas, if that's you, I just want to invite you to think about what Jesus can do for you today, because I believe that he can change not just your life today, and we as a church believe that he can change your life today as well as your eternity. And you can receive that invitation for your life today, right where you're at. There's no special prayer to pray. There's no special words to say. It's just about being honest and about telling Jesus how you feel and what it is that you want. And right now, right here today, can be your defining moment, and you can receive Jesus into your life as the leader of your life, your Lord, and as the forgiver of your sins, as your Savior. You can do that right where you're at today. And if you do, I would just encourage you to just let us know, because we would love to walk in that new journey with you. We'd love to give you some resources that can help you take next steps to follow Jesus and grow closer to him and know more about him. And we would love to welcome you into our church community if that's a good fit for you. If our local church is a good fit for you, we would love to invite you into that as well. And if you do that today, we would love to hear from you. We would love for you to email us, contact us, connect with us on social media, because like I said, we would love to hear about that and celebrate that with you. If you want to view past episodes of our podcast, or if you want to learn more about the podcast in general, you can go to our website, relevantcommunity.org/yourstory. Or if you'd like to, again, like I said, share a bit of your story, tell us about things that you've experienced. If something that Tobi said stuck with you today and really stirred something inside of you today that you'd like to share with us as well, we would love to hear about that. You can email us, you can ask us any questions, give us any comments that you have, and that email address is yourstory@relevantcommunity.org. We would love to hear from you there. This is real life. This is real transformation. And this is your story. Thank you for joining us. Thanks, Tobi. Appreciate it.